great pleasure to welcome you, my distinguished colleagues and our invited guests, to this investigative hearing occasioned by the outcry of Nigerians following the hike in electricity tariffs and the crisis in the power sector of our dear country. If you look at the message on the board before you came in, what you will see is proposed hike, because this particular resolution was taken by the Senate before the hikes were done. And we find it, well, in our nature, we do not change the words of any resolution. So that's why you will find when you're coming in that we're talking about proposed hike, whereas the hike has already been implemented. Let me also state that this is an investigative hearing and not an inquisition. In other words, you should be very clear, very concise, and not afraid to tell Nigerians what you know about the matters we will discuss here today. This motion, this hearing is sequel to two motions presented on Tuesday, the 25th of July, 2023. So you can see how far back it was done. On Wednesday, the 21st of February, 2024, where the Senate by resolution mandated the Committee on Power to 1, engage with the Federal Ministry of Power, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, and other stakeholders to find a lasting solution to the challenges facing the electricity sector, including the need for comprehensive sector reforms. 2, to investigate the over 2 trillion naira subsidy requirement, as stated by the Minister of Power, so that we could avoid a repeat of the fuel subsidy scenario and the statement made by the Honorable Minister with regard to the 1.3 trillion naira the Ministry is owing generating companies, and which I believe must have increased by today. And also to investigate the role of the Ministry of Power, NERC, and a company known as Ziglax on their failed agreement to provide meters and ensure that Nigerians are not shortchanged. Of utmost importance is to ensure that the provisions of the Electricity Act 2023, as amended, are implemented to the letter, particularly sections pertaining to tariffs and subsidies, in the sense that the procedures for such increase are strictly followed upon proper consultation and after due dissemination of information to end users, because these are the bone of contention at the moment. This investigative hearing will focus primarily on answering 3 basic questions. A, at what time did NERC migrate from the previous customer classes of residential, R1, R2, and R3, commercial, C1 and C2, and demand, D1 and D2, to the present unexplainable bands, A, B, C, and so forth for electricity customers. B, what constitutes consultation in the context of rate setting in the electricity market? And C, what can be considered, according to the Electricity Act 2023, a rate that will be just, reasonable, fair, equitable, and non-discriminatory. So right from the onset, we want to state that this committee is committed, and indeed, the 10th Senate committed to stringently carry out this assignment to alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians, and will not hesitate to recommend measures and sanctions to anybody or any agency that is found culpable. In conclusion, the committee and the Senate at large is poised to give legislative support that is desirable to ensure that in this matter of rate setting and power outages, that a lasting solution is found and make Nigerians to really desire electricity that is at all times necessary for our development. And so on behalf of the committee, I want to welcome each and every one of you to this investigative hearing. Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
Mr. The Honorable Minister of Power, Federal Republic of Nigeria. There is no official presentation from the ministry today, because I'm here together with the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry to represent the ministry. We have agencies under the ministry that will actually provide a more elaborate presentation and answers to questions to be asked under this investigative meeting. But as the Minister of Power, I would like to provide a general overview of what transpired recently in the sector with regards to the upward review of tariff for certain band of customers and the other issues raised by the chairman of the Senate committee with regards to the investments by the federal government through the CBN and the status of metering in the federal government metering intervention. Detailed and more technical explanations will be provided in the course of the investigative panel. Let me first of all remind us that we cannot overemphasize the importance of power to economic growth and industrial development of any nation. It is actually like the blood that the economy needs to run. And given the fact that the Nigerian power sector has underperformed compared to other countries in the world, specifically made mention of a country like Korea, South Korea, with a population of 49 million that generates about 130,000 megawatts of electricity. China is 1.4 billion in population and generates about 1.3 million megawatts of electricity. Even in Africa, Egypt is over 25,000 megawatts, and about 8,000 megawatts added within the 5-year period, which was what actually motivated the Presidential Power Initiative of the Siemens project in 2018 by the previous administration to engage Siemens to do the same thing in Nigeria here. So overall, we have just a little over 4,000 megawatts for over 200 million population in Nigeria. It is quite shameful that in over 60 years of the existence of this industry, we've not gone past 4,000 plus in megawatts. It is not that we don't generate electricity. We generate over 80 to 90,000 megawatts of electricity in Nigeria. But we know that the bulk of this electricity generated by individual households, businesses, and industries through petrol and diesel generators, which is really not good for the economy and is also not economical for the desired growth that we're looking for. I will say that, which is why we came in. We came in as a ministry under the current administration to look at the critical issues bedeviling the sector and how do we make a change. And we found out that what we have been addressing in the past in this country were actually symptoms in the industry, not really tackling the real root cause of the problems that we have. And we were bold enough to come up after a comprehensive diagnosis with what we believe are the real issues that should be addressed in this sector. Top on the list of these issues was actually liquidity. We believe that there's no adequate liquidity in this sector. And for any business that lacks liquidity, the lifespan is short, and in no time it will be granted. Any business that wants to exist on a continuous and sustainable basis must be allowed to operate on a normal commercial flow, economic flow of production, transportation, delivery, billing, collection, and every operator in the sector will be compensated. But what we found out is what we have been operating is what is called a subsidized tariff regime, whereby consumers of electricity have never been allowed to pay the full commercial price of electricity, which on its own is very good. A lot of other countries subsidize electricity, even the big economies, the US, the UK, China, and so on and so forth. So there's nothing bad in subsidizing. But the issue is, have we been funding the subsidy? There has not been funding for this subsidy. And this has culminated into each debt piling up for the operators in the industry, especially the generating companies and the gas supply companies. As at the last estimate, we said 1.3 trillion naira is being owed to the power generating companies, while the legacy debt of the gas supply companies stood at $1.3 billion. In 2023, the total subsidy for the tariff was supposed to be 720 billion naira. The government only funded 400 billion, leaving a total of over 300 billion brought forward to 2024. And at the current pricing regime, we estimated that if we retain the tariff at the current rates, government will be needing about 2.9 trillion to subsidize electricity this year. And we looked at the government budget itself. We looked at the provision for subsidy. We discovered and confirmed that government could not afford to pay this. Government budget is 28 trillion naira. 2.9 trillion in subsidy for power sector alone is over 10% of the budget, which is not realistic for us to ask the government to pay. But there are other competing sectors for these limited resources. We now said we should find a way around this. There must be a way subsidy must be reduced. And we said, okay, we cannot attack the industry 100% because each category of customers have some limited level of electricity supply. And we said, if at all we're going to revise the tariff upward, let it not be 100%, because it was going to add to the hardship and surface of Nigeria, given the recent hardship they are experiencing from the removal of fuel subsidy and from harmonization of the dual exchange rate. We now say, let's look at those set of customers that can actually have some stable level of supply of minimum of 20 hours per day. So what we did was actually creative and quite different from what we have experienced in terms of tariff review in the past. We made it a conditional tariff. We made it a service reflective tariff, that the only condition that can make a distribution company to charge the new tariff of 225 naira per kilowatt hour is they must ensure they supply a minimum of 20 hours to that consumer every day. If they cannot sustain this within a period of 7 days, such consumers must be graduated to the old tariff. That is the condition. And you might look at it is based, okay, on the feeders and all that. We look at those feeders with infrastructure that can actually guarantee 20 hours minimum supply to the consumer, which is why we labeled it in feeders. It is actually based on supply, not on affordability, not on economic status or any societal setting. It is based on supply. Any consumer that can get supply of 20 hours, they can pay 225 naira per kilowatt hour, as against the 66 naira in the old regime. And we also put in some monitoring and tracking framework to ensure that discos are compelled to comply with this tariff order, which is we must supply minimum 20 hours of electricity. And this was displayed in the first day or the first week of this new regime, that it was discovered that a particular disco was not supplying up to 20 hours and was charging the customers. A penalty of 200 million naira was slammed on this disco. This did not only make that disco to start complying, but it also compelled other discos not to charge those customers that cannot enjoy 20 hours of supply the new tariff regime. So on this, I can actually assure Nigerians that any customer that is not enjoying 20 hours will not pay the new tariff regime. And why we did that is we tried to encourage or incentivize the discos by allowing them to first migrate those customers with good infrastructure that can sustain the supply into this band. Then as time goes on, once they know that there is enough money to be made on the next level of customers, there will be a lot of investments into their infrastructure to enable them also upgrade the supply of those other consumers into the band A. And we believe that with time, we're going to achieve this for everybody over the next 3 to 5 years. The issue of liquidity has affected the industry in so many ways. Number one, it has not allowed the discos to invest in infrastructure upgrade. Because we believe that if they hardly cover their cost of operation, where would they get money to even invest? And a lot of them are not so financially strong enough to provide capital for this investment. And secondly, the lenders are not attracted to give loans to this sector to support the discos in their investment stride to improve infrastructure. Who are they not attracted? The lenders cannot see any line of sight on how these loans will be paid back if there is no liquidity. How will they pay back the loans given to this sector? And lastly, we believe that given the rate of inflation, given the escalating exchange rates, and some other factors, cost of doing business, cost of production of goods and services have gone up in the past 1 to 2 years. And the last time a review of tariff was carried out was 2022, which is almost over 2 years ago. And the Act actually allowed for minor review of tariff every 6 months and a major review of tariff every 2 years, given the fact that cost of production will go up. As it is, if we had not touched that tariff and we left it at 66 naira that we added, I'm telling you that federal government will be subsidizing close to 70% of the cost of electricity provision. And secondly, federal government will be subsidizing about 90% of cost of generating electricity. Because as at the last payment made by the DISCOs in March this year, it was only 9% of the invoices of power generating companies that were paid. Just 9%, which means that federal government is supposed to pay 91%. And can we really afford this? So instead of allowing these debts to continue to pile up to the extent that the sector will get to it out, we said, let us take this proactive decision to ensure that we increase the tariff to a certain band of customers that can enjoy some level of supply of electricity at 20 hours per hour in a day. That is as far as tariff and subsidies is concerned. It's a conditional tariff and it's also a service reflective tariff. In terms of cost of investment by the federal government through the central bank, let me mention here that apart from the appropriation from the Ministry of Power and its agencies, including the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, Rural Electrification Agency, any other expenditure in the sector is actually in form of loan to the sector operators. They are not expended as federal government expenditure. It's only appropriation from the Ministry of Power for interventions, especially in the distribution space of the sector, and the Rural Electrification Agency in the space of rural electrification, as well as the TCN in the space of transmission. Any money or any fund advanced to a generating company or to a distribution company is not a grant by the federal government and is not expended. And there are frameworks to actually recover this intervention fund. I believe that further clarification will be provided by NERC and the representative of Central Bank of Nigeria here. The third point has to do with the status of the metering initiatives of the federal government metering intervention. I will also like to mention that there was a metering intervention initiative by the Central Bank of Nigeria a few years back, which was at phase 0 that was carried out for 1 million meters acquisition, which actually took place. I think about 950,000 meters were actually installed under this scheme. It was supposed to progress to phase 1, which targeted about 4 million meters. But because of the discrepancies noticed in the first phase, which is the phase 0, CBN opted out and could not finance this metering acquisition of 4 million meters. The power sector reform program, the PSRP, under the distribution sector expansion program of the World Bank, there was actually an initiative to acquire 1,250,000 meters for the sector, and a bid was advertised for this. Before the completion of this bid, The Association of Meter Manufacturers of Nigeria, they actually went to court and they altered this program on the basis that the local meter manufacturers should also be included in the program. This delayed the World Bank program for some time until we resumed, and I took over the Ministry of Power and I also intervened, called the Amon executives, and we appealed to them, and they withdrew the case from the court, after which the bid took place. And even the bid result has been announced. But the only reason why we have not moved forward is the fact that the fund that was to be used by World Bank has not been included in the borrowing plan in the country for 2024, which is what the Ministry of Finance is working on to ensure that it is included in the nation's borrowing plan for the year. Once this is done, the bid or the exercise will proceed to actual completion. That is for the metering. But of late, Mr. President also noticed that a number of all these accelerated metering acquisition program will not solve the problems. And he initiated or he established the Presidential Metering Initiative, the PMI, and he formed the Presidential Metering Council, which he made me the chairman of the council. This has the mandate of harmonizing all other accelerated metering initiatives under the PMI and ensure that, as a matter of target, on a yearly basis, we're able to acquire 2 million to 2.5 million meters on a yearly basis for the next 4 to 5 years, which means that about 8 to 10 million meters will be acquired for the sector within the next 4 to 5 years. And this will be a combination of importation and local manufacturing. The metering gap has been put at about 8 million presently, and we believe that this Mr. President's initiative will solve or resolve the huge metering gap that we have. That is on metering. And whatever we are spending on this will not be just an expense. They are recoverable expenditure. We believe that with the revised tariff, there will be enough latitude for us to recover whatever we are spending on the metering initiative. One thing I just want to assure this sitting is the fact that before we could come up with any policy, we must have looked at various options too, that will not bring hardship or sufferings to Nigeria. We are as concerned as every other Nigerian. We also use electricity in our homes. We use in our private companies and all that. So we believe that when we have a tariff regime, it affects everybody, not just a particular set of people in Nigeria. It's only when we don't really have a choice that we come up with something that will actually rescue the sector, because this sector must not be granted. It must continue, and the only way we can make it to sustain is to take some very tough steps that may actually bring temporary pains to us as Nigerians, but we believe that the permanent gains are banned. So I believe that repairs at times could come with more pains, but when we are done, we believe that we will all enjoy the benefits of the sector, because electricity, like I said, is like the blood that we all need to survive. I think that's about what I want to say as a general overview. Why will be available to take any other questions that you have. The ministry is there, the PAM sector is there with me, and we have all the heads of agencies that will be available to answer your questions. Thank you very much. But before I leave, Mr. Chairman, let me also mention that we should use the opportunity of this sitting to address those other issues that we believe are the one militating against the success of this sector.
Minister, we want to focus on the issue we are here.